They thought Baba Yaga was dead. Then 37 minutes later, he struck back. The Nexus Command Center buzzed with celebration as Admiral Vexithara watched the final readings from the orbital bombardment. Her 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as she studied the tactical display showing the smoldering remains of what had once been Earth's most feared military installation. The humans called it Fort Cerberus, but the Galactic Coalition knew it by another name entirely. "Baba Yaga base is confirmed destroyed," reported her tactical officer, a tall Meridian with crystalline skin that reflected the bridge's blue lighting. "No life signs detected. The human's legendary ghost operative is finally eliminated." Vexithara's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among her species. For 3 years, one human had single-handedly crippled Coalition operations across 7 star systems. The being they called Baba Yaga had become a nightmare whispered in the corridors of Coalition vessels. Supply convoys vanished without distress signals. Forward bases went silent overnight. Entire fleets reported phantom attacks before losing all contact. The human military had claimed Baba Yaga was just a code name for their Special Operations Division, but Coalition intelligence knew better. Every attack bore the same impossible signature, the same tactical brilliance that defied conventional warfare. One being moving through space like death itself, leaving only empty ships and abandoned stations in its wake. "Sir, we're receiving confirmation from all sectors," the communications officer announced, her reptilian features brightening. "Coalition High Command is declaring victory. The human resistance is broken." Across the bridge, officers from a dozen different species nodded in approval. The Galactic Coalition had been formed to bring order to the chaos of independent worlds, but Earth had proven surprisingly stubborn. Unlike other primitive civilizations that had submitted after a show of superior firepower, the humans had fought with a desperate creativity that had cost the Coalition dearly. "What's our status on the human homeworld?" Vexithara asked, turning to her strategic planning console. "Complete orbital blockade maintained. No ships in or out for the past 14 months. Their remaining population centers are contained but not subdued. However, without their ghost operative, organized resistance should collapse within days." The Admiral nodded, remembering the briefings about humanity's psychological dependence on their heroes. Unlike the Coalition's logical military hierarchy, humans seemed to rally around individual figures who embodied their hopes. Remove those figures, and their resistance crumbled. It had worked on 17 other worlds. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out, his voice cutting through the victory atmosphere, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from the debris field." Vexithara turned, her celebration dimming. "Specify." "It's difficult to classify. The wreckage is emitting some kind of low-frequency pulse, almost like a heartbeat." "Impossible. We've confirmed total structural destruction. Nothing could have survived a direct hit from our planetary bombardment cannons." But even as she spoke, Vexithara felt an uncomfortable tingling along her neural pathways. Her species had evolved from pack hunters, and ancient instincts still whispered warnings when something wasn't right. She had felt this same unease during previous encounters with Baba Yaga's aftermath, though she had never understood why. "Increase sensor resolution. I want a complete molecular analysis of that debris field." The bridge fell silent as the ship's advanced scanners focused on the remains of the fortress below. For several minutes, only the hum of machinery filled the air. Then the sensor operator's breathing apparatus began cycling rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "Admiral, this is impossible. The energy signature is getting stronger. And there's something else." "Report." "The debris isn't random. It's organizing itself, forming patterns." On the main display, the scattered remains of Fort Cerberus began to shift and move. At first, it looked like natural gravitational effects, but then the movements became too deliberate. too purposeful. Massive chunks of twisted metal drifted together with mathematical precision. "Ma'am, I'm reading massive power buildup from multiple points in the debris field. Whatever's down there, it's not dead." Vexathera's 4 eyes narrowed as she studied the impossible scene unfolding on her screens. Every tactical manual in Coalition history said this was impossible. No technology in the known galaxy could allow anything to survive the firepower they had just unleashed. "All ships, raise defensive barriers, charge weapons systems." But even as she gave the order, Vexathera knew they were too late. The debris field below pulsed once, like a massive heart taking its first breath after a long sleep. Then space itself seemed to twist around the reformed structure, bending light and matter in ways that made her bridge crew cry out in alarm. "Admiral, the humans, how could they have technology like this? Our intelligence said they barely achieved faster than light travel." "Because," a cold voice said from behind them, "you never understood what you were really fighting." Every officer on the bridge spun toward the voice. Standing near the main console, as if he had always been there, was a figure in black tactical armor. The armor's surface seemed to absorb light, making details difficult to focus on, but the shape was unmistakably human. Average height, lean build, nothing that should have struck fear into the hearts of Coalition warriors. But terror filled the bridge nonetheless. This was Baba Yaga. "Impossible," Vexathera whispered. "We watched you die. We confirmed your elimination." The figure tilted its head slightly, and though no face was visible through the helmet's dark visor, Vexathera could feel the weight of ancient, patient eyes studying her. "You destroyed a building. Congratulations." The voice carried no emotion, no anger, nothing that could be bargained with or reasoned against. It was the voice of inevitability itself. "Did you really think that would be enough?" "Security to the bridge! All units, converge on—" The human raised one hand, and every electronic system on the ship went silent. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting the bridge in a red glow that made the intruder look even more otherworldly. "Your mistake," Baba Yaga continued, stepping closer to the command chair, "was thinking like conquerors instead of like prey. You came to my world, killed my people, and celebrated victory before understanding what you had awakened." Vexathera reached for her sidearm, but her hand moved through empty air. The weapon was gone, along with every other piece of military equipment on the bridge. Her officers patted frantically at empty holsters, their panic growing. "The thing about legends," the human said, now standing directly in front of her, "is that they're much harder to kill than the beings who inspire them. Fort Cerberus wasn't my base of operations. It was my tomb, and you just helped me climb out of it." "What are you?" she managed to ask. For the first time, emotion entered the intruder's voice. Not anger, not hatred, but something far worse: disappointment. "I was a soldier, a father, a man who believed in protecting the innocent." The figure paused, looking out at the star field where Earth hung like a wounded jewel. "You took that away from me, turned me into something else entirely, something that exists for one purpose. Which is? To remind the galaxy why humanity should be left alone." The lights went out completely. In the absolute darkness that followed, Vexathera heard the sounds of her crew falling unconscious one by one. She felt her own consciousness slipping away, but not before hearing Baba Yaga's final words. 37 minutes. That's how long it took you to celebrate victory and lower your guard. In 37 minutes, I've already boarded every ship in your fleet. Your crews are sleeping now, but they'll wake up soon. And when they do, they'll have a message to carry back to your coalition. As darkness claimed her, Admiral Vexathera's last coherent thought was a desperate question. What kind of beings had they really tried to conquer? When the coalition fleet regained consciousness 6 hours later, they found their ships completely intact, but fundamentally changed. Every weapon system had been systematically dismantled and rebuilt into something else entirely. Where once there had been plasma cannons capable of scouring planets, there were now complex communication arrays broadcasting on frequencies that reached every corner of the galaxy. The message was simple, repeated in every known language. Earth is under the protection of Baba Yaga. Those who come in peace will find sanctuary. Those who come with violence will find only the dark between the stars. But by then, the legendary figure had already vanished, leaving only questions and the growing realization among coalition leadership that they had made a terrible miscalculation about human capabilities and resolve. The hunt begins. 3 days after the coalition fleet's humiliating conversion into unwilling messengers, Grand Marshal Korath paced the obsidian floors of the Coalition War Council chamber. The massive draconian scales rippled with barely contained fury as he studied the reports streaming in from across the galaxy. In 72 hours, Baba Yaga had struck 18 different coalition installations, each attack more impossible than the last. "Explain to me," Korath growled, his voice echoing off the crystalline walls where representatives from 47 different species sat in uncomfortable silence. "How one primitive human is systematically dismantling our entire military infrastructure." Counselor Yilandra, a graceful ethereal whose translucent form shimmered with nervous energy, spoke first. "Grand Marshal, perhaps we should reconsider our approach to the Sol system. The humans have clearly developed technologies we don't understand." "Technologies?" Korath's massive head swiveled toward her, predatory eyes narrowing. "This isn't technology. This is something else entirely." He gestured to the holographic display showing their latest intelligence. Fleet Admiral Zexmon's task force had been found drifting in the Kepler system, all weapons replaced with massive speakers broadcasting human music at volumes that could be heard across interstellar space. The cargo vessels in the Vega sector had been converted into mobile gardens, their holds filled with earth plants and a note reading, "A gift from humanity to any who hunger." "The pattern is clear," continued Counselor Vexithara, who had been promoted after surviving her encounter with the human legend. "Baba Yaga isn't destroying our forces. He's transforming them. Every attack serves dual purposes, demonstrating our vulnerability and showing an alternative to warfare." "Alternative?" Korath's laugh was like grinding stone. "We are the Galactic Coalition. We bring order to chaos, civilization to savagery. We don't need alternatives from a species that hasn't even colonized its own solar system." But even as he spoke, reports continued flooding in. The mining operation in the Tau Ceti system had been converted into a rescue station for stranded travelers. The orbital weapons platform above Proxima Centauri now served as a communications hub, connecting previously isolated colonies. Each transformation was executed with surgical precision and impossible speed. "How does he move between targets so quickly?" demanded General Thexkor, a military engineer whose insectoid features betrayed his growing anxiety. "Our fastest ships require days to travel those distances. He's hitting multiple targets simultaneously across hundreds of light years." "Because," said a new voice from the chamber's entrance, "he's not traveling through space. He's traveling through something else entirely." Every head turned toward the speaker, a tall humanoid in the flowing robes of the cosmic seers. These ancient beings claimed descendants from the first sapient species in the galaxy, and their knowledge of the universe's deeper mysteries was unquestioned, even if their motives remained opaque. "Seer Valthis," Korath acknowledged with grudging respect. "You have insight into this human phenomenon." The seer glided forward, his expression grave beneath the star map tattoos that covered his azure skin. "We have watched this being since his first actions against your forces." What you call Baba Yaga exists partially outside normal space-time. He moves through what your species would term the shadow realm, the spaces between dimensions where thought and reality intersect. Impossible, scoffed Counselor Draktor, a pragmatic mechanist whose cybernetic implants whirred with computational analysis. No known technology allows for trans-dimensional travel. Known technology, yes, Valthus agreed. But consider this. Your intelligence reports indicate that the human-designated Baba Yaga died protecting his family during your initial assault on Earth's colonies. Medical scanners confirm no life signs. Yet here he stands, somehow both dead and alive, moving through realms that living beings cannot access. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Korath's scaled features twisted with disbelief. You're suggesting he's some kind of revenant? A ghost story made manifest? I'm suggesting, Valthus replied carefully, that humanity possesses something the Coalition has never encountered before. The ability to create legends so powerful they take on their own existence. Your own actions transformed a simple soldier into something beyond physical limitations. Metaphysical nonsense, Korath dismissed, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Valthus activated a personal holographic projector showing recordings of recent Coalition encounters with human forces. Observe the pattern. Before Baba Yaga's emergence, human resistance followed conventional parameters. Limited resources, predictable tactics, declining morale. After his first appearance, human forces began fighting with desperate courage that defied logical analysis. The recordings showed Coalition troops retreating from human defenders who should have been overwhelmed. Impossible last-minute victories. Tactical brilliance emerging from ordinary soldiers. Supply lines appearing where none should exist. He's not just striking at our military assets, Valthus continued. He's becoming a symbol that transforms the very nature of the conflict. Every impossible victory attributed to Baba Yaga makes human resistance stronger, more creative, more dangerous. Then we destroy the symbol, Korath declared, slamming his massive fist on the table. Deploy everything we have. Hunt down this phantom and end his influence permanently. With respect, Grand Marshal, Counselor Yelandra interjected. Our previous attempts at direct confrontation have only made him stronger. Perhaps negotiation. Negotiation? Korath's roar shook the chamber. We don't negotiate with primitives. We are the apex of galactic civilization. If this Baba Yaga can be destroyed once, he can be destroyed again. Valthus shook his head sadly. You still don't understand what you're facing. This being exists because you created the conditions for his existence. Every act of violence against humanity, every civilian casualty, every family destroyed adds to his power. He is vengeance given form, protection made manifest. Then what do you suggest? Demanded General Thexkor. Withdrawal. Complete abandonment of the Sol system and all human territories. Allow humanity to develop naturally, without interference. The suggestion sparked immediate outrage from military representatives. Korath's scales flared with indignation. Impossible. The Coalition does not retreat. We do not abandon conquest because of ghost stories and primitive superstition. Then you will face the consequences, Valthus warned. Our ancient records speak of similar phenomena among other species. Beings of pure will and purpose, created by necessity and sustained by belief. They cannot be defeated by conventional means because they exist beyond conventional reality. We'll see about that, Korath growled, turning to his tactical staff. Deploy the Omega Protocol. Every available ship, every experimental weapon, every technological advantage we possess. I want Baba Yaga found and eliminated, no matter the cost. As the War Council erupted into planning sessions and strategic debates, Valthus quietly withdrew from the chamber. In the corridor outside, He activated a secure communication device and spoke in the ancient tongue of his people. "The wheels of fate turn as predicted," he murmured. "The coalition chooses the path of escalation. May the stars have mercy on them all." Meanwhile, in the space between spaces where darkness reigned absolute, a figure in black armor stood before a shimmering portal that showed Earth hanging in the void, scarred but unbroken. Behind him stretched an infinite library of shadows, where the memories and hopes of every human who had ever lived in fear of conquest gathered like stars in a night sky. "They're mobilizing everything against us," he said to the darkness, though his words seemed addressed to no one visible. "Let them come," whispered voices that might have been wind or might have been the collective will of humanity itself. "We are no longer bound by their understanding of possible and impossible. We are what we need to be." The armored figure nodded and stepped toward another portal, this one showing a coalition fortress that believed itself impregnable. Around him, the shadows began to move with purpose, carrying the hopes of the innocent and the fury of the protector toward their next destination. The hunt was about to begin in earnest, but neither side fully understood who was really the prey. The final gambit. The Omega fleet assembled in the dead space between galaxies, far from any star's light where sensors could not easily track their massive formation. 2,000 ships representing the coalition's most advanced military technology floated in perfect formation around the command dreadnought Inevitable Conquest. Grand Marshal Korath stood on the primary bridge, watching tactical displays that showed enough firepower to crack planets and sterilize entire star systems. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "All ships report combat ready," announced Fleet Admiral Zarthek, a seasoned hegemony warrior whose cybernetic eye implants glowed with tactical data. "Dimensional jammers are active, quantum disruption fields online, phase variant scramblers operating at full capacity." "Good." Korath studied the readouts with satisfaction. "Whatever allows this Baba Yaga to move through shadow realms, our technology will force him into normal space, where he can be destroyed like any other enemy." Dr. Velnara, the Coalition's leading expert on exotic physics, looked up from her station with barely concealed nervousness. "Grand Marshal, I must emphasize that we're entering completely theoretical territory. The dimensional jammers could have unintended consequences." "The only consequence I care about," Korath replied coldly, "is the elimination of humanity's ghost operative. Begin Phase 1. Across the fleet, massive generators hummed to life, creating overlapping fields of exotic energy that stretched across light years of space. Reality itself began to crystallize, forcing the malleable boundaries between dimensions into rigid, impenetrable barriers. It was the most ambitious technological undertaking in Coalition history, designed to trap a being of legend in the physical universe where conventional weapons could reach him. "Dimensional barriers stabilized," reported Dr. Velnara. "All Shadow Realm access points within our operational area are sealed." "Excellent. Begin our approach to the Sol system." But even as the massive fleet began its journey toward Earth, something was wrong. Reports began filtering in from Coalition territories across the galaxy, each more disturbing than the last. Baba Yaga wasn't trapped by their dimensional barriers. He was everywhere at once. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the Rigel sector," announced the communications officer. "The main supply depot has been transformed." "Specify." "The weapons storage facility is now a school, complete with teachers from dozens of different species and children from every Coalition member world." Korath's scales began to darken with fury. "How is that possible?" "Our jammers should prevent any Shadow Realm access." More reports flooded in. The military academy on Centauri Prime had become a vast garden where former enemies worked together to grow food for refugee populations. The interrogation center in the Vega system was now a medical facility staffed by the galaxy's finest healers. Each transformation was impossible, beautiful, and utterly infuriating to military minds. "Grand Marshal," Dr. Velnara said urgently, "I think our dimensional barriers may have had the opposite effect from what we intended." "Explain." "By sealing the shadow realms, we've forced Baba Yaga to manifest more directly in our reality. Instead of being limited to physical movement, he's now affecting probability itself, altering the fundamental nature of cause and effect within normal space." "That's impossible." "So is everything else about this conflict," she replied grimly. "Our sensors are detecting massive quantum fluctuations throughout Coalition space. Reality is becoming more fluid around areas of human influence." Korath stared at the tactical displays, watching red warning indicators spread across the galactic map like wildfire. Every Coalition installation was experiencing some form of impossible transformation. Military bases becoming refugee centers, weapons factories producing medical supplies, prisons opening their doors to release political prisoners who emerged speaking of forgiveness and hope. "He's not fighting a military campaign," Admiral Zarthek realized, his voice filled with grudging admiration. "He's fighting a philosophical one. Every transformation demonstrates an alternative to our methods of conquest and control." "Then we end this at the source," Korath declared. "All ships, maximum velocity to Earth. We destroy the human homeworld and end their legend permanently." But as the Omega fleet accelerated toward Sol, they found their path increasingly difficult. Navigation systems began reporting impossible readings. Space itself seemed to resist their passage, creating gravitational anomalies that forced constant course corrections. What should have been a 3-day journey stretched into weeks as reality itself appeared to conspire against their advance. During the long voyage, crew morale began to deteriorate in ways that defied explanation. Soldiers who had served for decades began questioning orders. Engineers found themselves modifying weapon systems to be less destructive, often without conscious awareness of their actions. The ship's libraries began filling with human literature that somehow appeared without being downloaded or uploaded. "Sir," reported the ship's chief medical officer, "we're seeing unprecedented psychological changes among the crew. It's as if exposure to human influence is awakening dormant empathy in species that evolved beyond such emotions." Korath examined the reports with growing alarm. His own dreams had become filled with images of Earth's beauty, memories that weren't his of human families living in peace, and a persistent voice asking why conquest was necessary when cooperation was possible. "Deploy the psi-blockers," he ordered. "Whatever influence this Baba Yaga is exerting, we'll shield our minds against it." But the psi-blockers proved useless against something that wasn't telepathic, but rather operated on the level of fundamental meaning itself. The closer they got to Earth, the more the crew began to understand what they were really doing, seeing their mission not through the lens of military necessity, but through the eyes of those they intended to harm. When the Omega fleet finally reached the Sol system, they found Earth surrounded by an impossible sight. Ships from every Coalition member species floated in protective formation around the human homeworld, their crews having independently abandoned their posts to stand guard over the planet they had been sent to destroy. "This is impossible," Korath breathed, staring at the display. "Those are our ships, our people." "No, sir," said Admiral Zarthek quietly. "Those are people who remembered who they wanted to be, instead of who they were ordered to be." As if summoned by their arrival, space itself seemed to part, and Baba Yaga materialized on the bridge of the inevitable conquest. But this time, he was not alone. Behind him stood the translucent forms of every being who had ever died protecting those they loved, every parent who had given their life for their children, every soldier who had chosen mercy over vengeance. "You came seeking to end a legend," Baba Yaga said, his voice now carrying the weight of every noble sacrifice in galactic history. "But legends aren't destroyed by weapons. They're only destroyed when beings stop believing in the ideals they represent." Korath reached for his weapon, but found his hand would not obey. Around the bridge, his crew stood transfixed, seeing not an enemy, but a reflection of every heroic story they had ever heard, every moment when they had chosen to protect rather than destroy. "Look around you," Baba Yaga continued, gesturing toward the view screen where coalition ships from across the galaxy were arriving to join Earth's protectors. "Your people are choosing hope over fear, creation over destruction. They're choosing to be the heroes of their own stories rather than the villains of mine." "We are conquerors," Korath said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It is what we were born to be." "No," Baba Yaga replied gently. "You were born to be gardeners, teachers, explorers, creators. Conquest was just what you chose when you forgot your true nature." The armored figure approached Korath directly, and for the first time, the Grand Marshal could see past the dark visor to the human face beneath. It was not the face of a warrior or an avenging spirit, but of a father who had lost everything and chosen to transform that loss into protection for all the innocent beings in the galaxy. "I offer you the same choice I've offered everyone else," Baba Yaga said. "Continue down the path of conquest and face the consequences, or choose to build something better." Korath looked around his bridge, seeing his crew nodding in agreement, their faces showing hope instead of the grim determination of soldiers. He thought of his own homeworld, of the family he had left behind to pursue military glory, of the peaceful life he could have chosen instead. "What guarantee do we have that humanity won't seek revenge for what we've done?" "The same guarantee you had that conquest would bring you happiness," Baba Yaga replied. "None. But hope is a better foundation for the future than fear." Grand Marshal Korath, conqueror of 17 star systems and terror of the galaxy's outer rim, slowly removed his command insignia and placed it on the console beside him. "Fleet-wide communication," he said quietly. "All ships stand down. We're going home." As the massive coalition fleet began to disperse, ships returning to homeworlds that many had not seen in decades, Baba Yaga nodded once to Korath and began to fade from view. "Wait," the former Grand Marshal called out. "What happens to you now? The threat is ended." "I go where I'm needed," came the reply. "There are always those who need protection, always innocents who face overwhelming odds. The legend continues as long as beings believe that good can triumph over evil, that love can overcome hate. And if another threat arises, if someone else chooses conquest over cooperation?" The shadowy figure smiled, and for a moment Korath could see not just the human father, but all the parents throughout the galaxy who would do anything to protect their children. "Then they'll discover the same truth you did," Baba Yaga said as he faded completely from view. "Legends never really die. They just wait in the spaces between stars until they're needed again." In the years that followed, the former coalition territories transformed into a voluntary confederation based on mutual aid and shared prosperity. The being known as Baba Yaga was rarely seen, but his influence spread throughout the galaxy as worlds chose cooperation over conquest and understanding over fear. And in the space between dimensions, where thoughts become reality and love shapes the fundamental forces of the universe, a guardian watched and waited, ready to remind the galaxy why some things are worth protecting, no matter the cost.